Today on Data Radicals, I'm joined by Michael Olaye, EVP and Managing Director of Hero Digital, where he drives client strategy and business objectives. Previously, Michael served as the SVP and Managing Director for Strategy for Innovation at RGA and held various leadership roles at national and global organizations in roles such as Chief Growth Officer, Chief Technology Officer, and Chief Executive Officer, working with brands like BMW Group, Credit Suisse, JP Morgan Chase, and Unilever. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, David.
So I just gave a little bit of a brief intro, but I'd love to hear more about your role right now as Managing Director at Hero Digital.
Sure. I've been at the organization now, we're coming up to 4 months. I lead the Western region of Hero. It's a customer experience specialist company. We don't like to say we're an agency. We also don't like to say we're like a consultancy. We're like a hybrid. And we basically service big brands and small brands across customer experience. Which is around everything from data to products to platform to services. And I run the Western region, so I like to think everything from Wyoming all the way to Japan. Everything there is in my region. And I basically work across the entire business, literally. So I'm the portfolio owner. I'm the executive sponsor across all our accounts, help with growth. I work on growth a lot. Retention of clients, retention of talent, hiring, strategy, vision of that region. And I'm also on the executive management team as well. As we scale as an organization, I partner with my colleagues to make sure we're doing that properly.
That's amazing. I know you started your career as a software developer. How did you make your way from front-end web development all the way to the role today at a creative agency?
I have no idea. I think I just fell into these roles. I actually studied to be a pilot at university. That was my dream. And then I learned HTML from the HTML for Dummies book, believe it or not, as a side reading thing. And I actually got my first role in the industry by knocking on door to door. I actually built a map of London underground, and I found all the agencies and all across the map, and I built a circle. And I literally left my house at like 7 a.m. and just randomly knocked on agency doors. Some agencies said, go away. Some agencies let me get as far as reception. A few took me into their studios. And I just tried until I got my first job. And my first boss was a creative director and art director in a tech company that had a design studio. So I actually started off in a design studio. And I was doing a lot of front end stuff, obviously, and then ended up doing a lot of back end things as well. So I ended up building a skill across like using programs like Illustrator and Freehand and Fireworks, this is pre-Photoshop, and then also writing code in director, but also like action script, being able to use keyframe animation, timeline animation. So I ended up learning both design and coding at the same time, which is useful.
Amazing. That's such a tale of perseverance. I'm imagining you going on the tube, knocking on these agencies and getting turned away. So fast forward 20, 25 years later, you're now at Hero Digital at the center of customer experience. And one of the things I know we wanted to discuss today is the role of data in understanding and shaping customer experience. Can you tell us a little bit about how you use data in your day-to-day role?
Yeah, I mean, we use it both internally to make like business decisions, everything from how our employees operate, where we invest, all the way to like building things for clients. So, whether that's insight gathering, whether it's actually building a product and using data to actually make those decisions. And then also when we launch things as well, we're constantly getting feedback, or you're constantly like tracking the data against what you've done. We also have a kind of media arm as well. So we do a lot of things in that space as well. So I would say for us, data is at the heart of like the organization, both like inwards as well as kind of working with clients and brands as well.
And when you think about customer experience, it can seem very intangible, very fluffy. What do you think is appropriate to measure and not measure with respect to customer experience?
Yeah, I actually don't think it's fluffy. I actually think it's very straightforward, right? Like depending on the vertical you sit in, the experience and the maturity of the experience will vary. So if we take health, for instance, when you want to measure in health, there's a lot of regulations around that. There's a lot of kind of control of what the data you get, what you can do with it. But actually, when you build a product in the health space, or when you build a tool, or when you build an application, you can track that application. You can get feedback from customers. You can see how that application or product is doing, and you can make, I wouldn't say live adjustments, but you can make like almost close to real-time adjustments. So that data is an ammunition for product improvement, business improvement, service improvement, customer service. So I actually think the whole CX thing is an offline and online world of how we humans interact with organizations. That is the experience, right? And also internally, how your employees interact with your organization is also CX. So I would say, B2B, B2C, internal operations, they're all like CX for me. And a lot of the brands that come to us, they vary. Some are quite young in their infant and they need us to help them build strategies around what is good CX, what does that look like. Other organizations are very digitized or transformational already. They have a lot of tools, but they might not be getting the return of investment. So they're looking for customer experience from the point of, right, I have all this data, what do I do with it? So I think it's quite straightforward. It's just understanding where in the maturity that category is and where in the maturity in that category the brand is sitting in.
When you think about measuring customer experience, you talked about customer sentiment. Is there an example you can share in terms of how you've thought about measuring customer sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, there's some good ones I can think of. I mean, I think we talked about the one with Watson, if I remember, which is basically, it's a project I was lucky enough to work on where we had the whole Universal album catalog available to us. We also had Twitter at the time, and we were able to basically scrub a person's profile, and depending on how you behaved at certain times of the day, what you liked, what you tweeted, what you shared, we could build like a personal like analysis of you as a person and your mood, and then we could recommend either Universal films or music to match a specific time of the day. And actually, there was a really good way of using data to almost, I wouldn't say measure the person, but actually create an application that provided a kind of pleasure to someone or actually made a change to how their daily life ran. And I think that's a good way of using data. In terms of measuring, like, data that's already out there or products that's already out there, we do a lot of reports. We're a Salesforce partner. We work with the likes of Adobe. And we have a lot of the tools that we use to kind of track data, things from workflows to supply chain, to product development, to media. And we're tracking that across a variety of different clients at Hero at the moment.
And when you think about measuring these insights, is there a limit to what can be measured, do you think?
I think so. I mean, the way we work at the moment is if you rubbish data in, rubbish data out, right? So usually there's a lot of human error in data. There's a lot of what I would call, especially in unstructured data, there's a lot of useless data. So it's around cleaning that data. Well, first of all, creating a strategy around what you're using the data for, and then being able to kind of clean it to the point where it actually is good enough for you to use it as an insight. So I would say, yeah, most of the clients we work with right now, they have a data team internally, sometimes not too big, and they have quite a lot of structured data that we work with. And then I'll say more on the product side, we have more unstructured data. So it could be a market leader, say in a banking or financial sector, and they're moving into kind of fintech. And a lot of the data that they might be acquiring to make business decisions might not be so clean and so structured.
Makes sense. And then I think ultimately we're using this data, as you said earlier, to inform decision making. And I know when we talk to our customers, oftentimes they're using these customer experience insights to personalize and shape the offers that they're putting in front of their customers. Can you share maybe a few examples of how the insights that have been gathered from this data are shaping the customer experience journeys for your clients?
Yes. So probably can't say what client it is, but we have a pretty big streaming cable client. We're helping them currently shift their business from a completely kind of cable-like organization to actually being more of a hybrid way. Streaming digital plays a huge part of the organization. They have a ton of data. They understand the audience. They understand the packages those audience buy. But we're also working with new forms of information, new forms of data on what the future demographic might look like, and what does a perfect next best customer look like. So there's a lot of data modeling going on. And, we're working to help them create kind of a new business model where they can compete with the likes of the more famous streaming organizations. And I would say a lot of that is around like the data structure itself, but also on a strategic side, how we work with that data to create a business plan and a roadmap that makes sense for the business. That could be leading into product development. It could be leading into R&D. It could lead into partnerships for them. But also sometimes it could lead into like an internal organization change. So we know data can provide those insights that usually you wouldn't know if you're inside an organization itself. So we as an agency coming through and saying, hey, we can see a pattern happening here, or in your industry, this is what the data is saying. And strategically, do you want to play in that field, or do you want to kind of challenge it in terms of how you set yourself up as a business?
Is there an example you can share where maybe a company was going in a certain direction, and then when they looked at the data, they looked at these insights that prompted them to maybe reconsider and go into a different direction?
Yeah, I did something for Unilever a couple of years ago, which was quite cool. There was a lot of informed data that they were using to almost create a campaign. It never went live, unfortunately, to try and create a campaign around what does a cougar mom or wife or teacher look like. And the perception on the internet was very different to actually what most women over 55 who were classed as cougars look like. And we actually did a really cool like analysis with data where we scrubbed Google. I think we got like almost 5 gig worth of like stuff off Google. And we also took images from different universities in the UK of different students, different ages of women. And then we trained a model we worked to clarify in it's an AI company in New York, where we trained the model to understand and to project what a cougar would look like in today's world. And actually what it came back with was actually quite realistic stuff, women with dreadlocks, women with different styles of, dressing, looks, some modern, some not. And that actually informed quite a lot of what Unilever was planning on doing across their marketing campaigns for the next kind of couple of years. They never launched that project, but it informed a lot of things that they were looking at and helped them make business decisions on how they should do some of the content marketing on social, how they should do content creation. So yeah, I think that's a good one where if we didn't do that, we just sat with the bias and the expectations of what the market thought cool was.
That's a really interesting example. Michael, you just mentioned Clarify AI and using data to train AI models. And as you said to me earlier, in today's market, you can't have a data conversation without talking about AI and vice versa. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about AI. Is AI something that you're starting to see in your day-to-day work?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first time I worked with any AI product, 2011, 2010, on the Watson, the sentiment engine I mentioned earlier, that was all the way back in 2010, 2011. And then the Unilever stuff was like 2016. I've worked with, data with BMW. There was a lot of like more machine learning things. And then I think 2017, obviously, when the Transformers came out and, ChatGPT came out, AI became this huge thing. And I don't think there's any tool that you can work with today that doesn't have AI. And I got some stats here that I always like to call out. So like over 50% of all US companies with more than 5,000 employees currently have AI, like they use an AI, And if you take that to 10,000 employees, it actually rises to 60%. So that's any company that has more than kind of 10,000 employees has 60% of their employees using AI. And actually the smaller businesses are the ones not using AI. So the small businesses, but the larger the enterprise, the more likely they're using it. When you get to large enterprises, there's 42% of all the employees are using AI. And we know pretty much every organization has an AI strategy or are thinking about AI strategy. And I think it's a technology that's pretty much fully infiltrated most of businesses today. It could be anything from simple use of ChatGPT to Midjourney, to building, large language models, to building small language models, to building agents. There's just a whole variety of different things that everyone's doing. And at the heart of all of that is the data. If you have the funding and you have, the brand equity and you have this data, you can do some pretty amazing stuff with this technology. It could be everything from customer service to new product innovation to actually just like changing your entire business model or creating a spool of services that, focus very much on generative AI or AI as a whole. So it's pretty exciting times, I think.
And there's AI in terms of automating or accelerating the work that we do day to day. That you touched on, automating customer service or accelerating image creation, for example. There's also AI to dramatically change and reimagine and transform these experiences. Are you seeing AI being used more in the first or the second camp?
I think AI is split into two right now, specifically because of IP, privacy, and bias. So I think there's a whole thing happening over here, which is many companies can do a lot of stuff with AI right now, but won't launch it out because it's just, the data is trained on, there's a lot of copyright infringement in there. Nobody wants to get sued for that. The companies like Adobe and Shutterstock are providing these huge enterprise AI tools that are amazing and protect you a little bit. They also have a limit on the stuff you can do before you get protected. There's like a numerical number in there of what you have to pay. So for many companies, the risk is too high. And there's also a lot of what I would call lack of understanding and education on what AI really means for an organization. So I always say any organization that wants to even touch this technology for public use needs to have a business like AI ready model. There's a few companies we're actually working with around like governance, privacy, IP, data sourcing, data storage, data breaching, human error. There's a whole bunch of stuff. We already know, even without AI, we've all heard horror stories of companies launching campaigns and things out there without like checking it properly and getting sued. So now to allow a machine to do that is too risky. So that's the first half. But the half that I think is super like exciting right now, which would help the second half later on, is building these internal work process tools, bringing efficiency, speeding up the creative thinking, speeding up strategy. And in our industry, in the marketing, technology, product industry, it's amazing because you can get from like initial concept to like ideation like super quickly. Like you can do stuff that would take weeks before in days. You can collaborate with people who have no technical knowledge on technical things. We have tools now that you can code by like verbally speaking natural language. We have tools that you can do design without having any design skills. So I think it's opened up a whole new side for agencies, consultancies, companies, but it's also opened a whole new side for a new like economy of like content creators. We had this first generation of social. We're going to see another generation. And then underlying that is the infrastructure that the likes of NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, Meta, they're building these frameworks. And I'm liking what I'm seeing about, they're talking about interoperability, the ability to have, agents talk to each other, the ability to have, collaborations. I've never seen so many collaborations. I remember 2020 saying, I've never seen so many tech companies talk to each other, like Microsoft OpenAI, but OpenAI is also talking to Apple, and they're all sharing the same it's amazing. So I would say those are the two camps. Internal, start now, be AI ready, train, upskill. If you have a licensed platform you haven't renewed in 10 years, maybe now's the time to renew it so you get all the AI benefits. And then on the other side is, governance. If you're using generative AI or you're building stuff for the public, it's just having checks and balances in place to protect your organization. So that's the two bits.
I fully agree with that. That matches everything that I'm seeing and hearing in the conversations I'm having as well, where data governance has really broadened to encompass AI governance. And absolutely, your comments around bias and privacy and IP infringement, I think, are top of mind for all companies. And that's one reason why Elation has invested so much in AI governance as a solution. What are some best practices that you're seeing in terms of how to mitigate those governance risks that you just mentioned?
I don't think we're at a place yet where we can trust the machines. I don't even say trust the machines 50%, if I'm being honest with you. I think we're in a place also where there's a lot of wishful thinking around what's responsible to like release to the world, what's responsible to train. I think we're all learning at the moment. So I think, making sure that the data, all the stuff we talked about earlier, making sure that when you get unstructured data and you structure it, or when you have structured data, that you clean it, and you check for human error, you check for bias in the system. When you train the data, you train it on a diverse range of data that reduces bias. I'm not expecting us to eliminate bias. I think even in society we have bias, so machines are going to pick up on that. When you build anything with AI, having a human in that loop, where we are today, having humans in that loop checking that also, it's good. And I'm actually one of the people who truly believe like AI is more of a companion than a replacer. So I think even, of course, maybe 20, 30, 40 years from now, as quantum computing comes online and all this other stuff that's coming, of course the AI is going to be doing its own thing and we don't have to worry. But I think in the next 5 to 10 years, as it advances, we still need humans to have those checks and balances, especially if you're allowing robotics and you have rogue humans in the world, you definitely need checks and balances. So I'd say in our industry, it's understanding where we can use the data in the cleanest form and its truest form, and then validating and vetting everything that we launch or push out that influences other people. And I'm not going to go into like all the bad characters, but you know what I mean, all the things that happen. And some of them happen by mistake. Not everything happens deliberately as well with these tools.
I think those are some great guidelines and North Stars to aim towards. For folks that might be thinking, how do I get started? What should I be doing over the next month, the next quarter in my company so I can start this journey? What might be some practical suggestions that you might give?
If you are not using any of the tools right now, that's a good place to start. There's so many tools out there. I like to recommend the free ones. Leonardo AI is pretty good. If you want to play around with AI video and imagery, please don't launch anything from it. Make sure you do your due diligence. Don't launch anything to the public. Wildlow is a pretty good tool if you like to do strategic thinking. If you work for an organization that has, like Microsoft, Copilot's pretty amazing as well. If you work for an organization that has Adobe, Firefly is pretty amazing. There's just so many tools out there. If you work in the data field for like Salesforce or Optimizely or Contentful or Content Stack or all these different platforms, I think we would all struggle to find any enterprise or open source established platform across any entity that doesn't have a form of machine learning or artificial intelligence in it somewhere. So I would say start there. If you're in a more mature organization, it doesn't hurt to find a few other people that think like you, to try and create a small crew where you can experiment. I think experimentation is very undervalued in companies that make a lot of money or companies that are comfortable where they are. This technology allows us to take data that otherwise wouldn't really be used for anything and create new magic out of it. So I can't say what that magic is because I don't work in those organizations, but these people we're talking to do. So I would say try to find the magic, or try to find the team members that can help you unlock the magic in your business to help build new things. Or if you just want to play around for fun, create your own channel. Mess around, share stuff internally. I think there's just so many tools out there. Easiest way to start is obviously a ChatGPT is a good start, and then Leonardo AI is a good start.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And you were starting to touch on the topic of bias and how data can be used for good, but it can also in some sense be used for bad as well, where there's kind of false truth being attached to that data. Is there an example that you can share maybe where data has not been used in the right way and has maybe led to poor decision making?
Yes, not on my personal experience.
Of course.
Because we have due diligence and everything is checked. But there was the case with Uber in the UK. I can't remember what year it was. I think it was maybe 2017, 2018. Don't count me on that. But they built an AI module into the validation of their drivers. And overnight, obviously, there was a lot of bias in the data. So overnight, a lot of, I'd say like Asian, like Pakistani, Indian, specifically men, got blocked from the app. Like they couldn't drive the car. They couldn't do their jobs the next day because basically the app, when the data was trained, mapped them to be more criminals than actually drivers, and actually just blocked a whole bunch of people, which took a lot of livelihoods away, and there was an uproar about that. So that is how bias can literally destroy someone's career. The other super famous one that everyone has seen is the hand dryer or the soap dispenser. I don't know if you've seen that one, which is pretty famous online. It's two friends, one's white, one's black. When the white guy puts his hand under the soap dispenser, it dispenses the soap. When the black guy puts his hand under the soap dispenser, it doesn't dispense the soap. So again, technology is great when it works, but when there's bias in it, it can be super, super harmful.
And what are some best practices that you recommend to your clients to avoid that kind of bias going forwards?
I think it's a multiple things. It's one, the team composition, like whoever's working on a project, whoever's working with data, having a diverse team where you can take all types of input is one. And even having that before you actually get the data, like looking out for what bias exists currently and how to find that within the data is super important. The second one is when you are training that data, make sure you have the right diversity on your team, basically, or right diversity to check the output of that data and make sure it doesn't have bias. It's super hard to have any like large chunk of data without any bias in it. But what you want to do is kind of reduce that by having checks and balances in place. And there's no better checks and balance than actually the actual people it's going to offend in the end. If you have them on your team or you have people who lived experiences of biases, they're more likely to be able to flag it earlier on so that you can actively check for it in your products and your services.
I think that's a great point, and I think having that diversity of thinking and approach and perspective is so important, not just in data, but in business and life as well.
Exactly.
I'd love to build on some of our earlier topics and talk a little bit about the data journeys that you've been seeing across the companies that you work with. At Elation, we talk about customers going on their own data culture journey, being able to find, understand, and then trust the data sets that they work with. And I'd love to use this next part of our discussion to really focus on those themes. Sure. In your work, you're parachuted into these clients and you're obviously asked to get up and running very quickly. The first thing is, how do you even find the data sets that you need to inform your day-to-day work?
I think there's an art to listening. So I think and I don't know if it's a specialty you build over experience or if it's a specialty that you have as you get good at your craft. But when you have a good team, because I don't think it's any one person, I think when you have a good team, there's an active way of listening and picking up on